Hello everyone, this is Johnny Lewis here at StrangeGamer.blogspot.com. Very exciting news from Tokyo, Japan today at the Sony annual conference meeting. Sony has announced the PlayStation Portable successor, not the PSP2, but a very PSP looking console under the codename guise NGP. NGP standing for the Next Generation Platform. Now, I gotta say, NGP doesn't sound all that great to me, and to be honest, it is just a development codename. I'm pretty sure Sony will change it eventually and officially announce that yes, the NGP is actually the PSP2, and we'll all be like, ooh, really? Ah, I wasn't expecting that. But yes, the NGP, next generation platform for handhelds. Come on, I mean, we're not going to be seeing a new Xbox 360 or 780, if you will, and we're not going to be seeing a PlayStation 4 anytime soon. But yes, this is the era of the new handheld systems, with Nintendo releasing their 3DS later in February, and Sony saying that the NGP will be available to consumers later this year during the holidays. And I think when they say holidays, they're probably referring to the end of the year, so probably Christmas holidays. So let's talk about the design of the NGP and the way it looks. First off, I've just got to say that the NGP looks very sleek indeed. We're presented with a very PSP-esque design with a glossy black piano finish. We finally have the dual analog sticks, and if you look at the photos, you can see that the analog sticks sort of stick out of the main body itself. So I'm hoping this means that when you actually move the analog sticks around, you have that tilt sensation which was missing from the original PSP. What I really disliked about the original PSP analog stick was when you moved it around, it sort of slid across the body. It didn't actually have that tilt movement which we're so familiar with on the PlayStation and Xbox controller and all analog stick controllers before it. So yes, very excited to see how the new analog sticks function on the NGP. The D-pad and button formations are looking very much the same. We have the PlayStation Home button as well as the Select and Start button. And the OLED screen is looking very nice indeed. The new screen is indeed a touchscreen, so I'm really excited to see what game developers will be doing with the inclusion of a touchscreen and the NGP control interface. Just quickly going back to the forward-facing buttons, I noticed that the buttons from the images anyways look very small and close together, very compact. I'm not sure if this is going to cause problems for people with, say, bigger thumbs, if you will. But it'll be interesting to see what the consumer base thinks about the front-facing button design. So if we look at the back of the NGP, we can see the infamous touchpad. And I gotta say, when I first heard about the touchpad, I wasn't too sure what to think about it. When we think about touchpads, I only really know the touchpad on, say, your laptop or your notebook. And although we're not technically looking at that touchpad when we interface with it to move the mouse cursor on your computer, I was just trying to think how we would use the touchpad on the back of the NGP, because if you think about having your thumbs on the front of the device to touch the forward-facing buttons and the D-pad, the analog sticks, and you have your index fingers on the shoulder buttons. So if you do this now and just quickly imagine that you're holding the NGP in front of you, and you have your thumbs, say, on the two analog sticks and both your index fingers on the shoulder buttons, then if you look at your middle finger, you can see already that that's not really in a position that looks comfortable to use the touchpad. I can't see, I can see the touchpad working in this way, but say the fingerprints of your middle fingers wouldn't really be touching the back of the touchpad. It sort of be the side of your fingers that would be touching the touchpad itself. I'm not sure if this is a big issue, but if you look at the photos, you can see that the user's hands there are using the touchpad using their index fingers and not their middle fingers. So maybe game developers will ask us to interface with the touchpad using our index fingers and not having to worry about using the shoulder buttons in conjunction at the same time with the touchpad. I'm not sure, it's too early to say, but I mean, I'm excited to see what the touchpad will be used for. I just don't know how it will work in addition to having the shoulder buttons in play at the same time. And finally, the NGP also sports the 6-axis control, which we're all very familiar with from the PlayStation 3 controller, as well as the iPhone, other portable devices, and of course the Nintendo Wii remotes. So having the 6-axis control is great for users. It just basically gives us that more variety and option to interface with the NGP as a whole. But I gotta say, what really has me excited about the NGP is the inclusion of all these features. We all knew that a second analog stick was coming. Sony would have been absolutely crazy not to include that in their new device. A touchscreen as well as a weird touchpad, built-in microphone with the 6-axis control, as well as the 3G enabled network. Just a combination of all these features has me really excited, and I'm looking forward to seeing how game developers will incorporate all these features into their games, and how users will respond to having all these different abilities to interface with the device. So before the NGP was announced earlier today, there were rumors already on the internet in regards to the PSP successor supposedly rivaling the power of the PlayStation 3, which is a pretty bold statement because if you can imagine the graphical power of the PlayStation 3 portable in your hands, I mean, that is just absolutely mind-blowing. But after reading the feedback from people that were at the Sony conference meeting today, I think we can all be assured that we are indeed dealing with a very powerful device, something that's powerful enough to have a port of Capcom's Lost Planet 2 ported directly from the PlayStation 3 onto the NGP, as well as having other big titles such as Uncharted by Naughty Dog also being playable. But aside from those two studios, we also had a lot of big game studio companies come on stage for the Sony conference meeting, announcing their titles for the NGP. Such names as Activision, who announced a Call of Duty game especially made for the NGP. We also had Konami come on stage, where Hideo Kojima announced that there was a title indeed being made for the NGP, but he wouldn't announce that until E3 later this year. We also had other names such as Rockstar, Square Enix, Capcom of course, with some other titles, Studio 5, and a surprise visit from Epic Games, who previewed Infinity Blade on the NGP. So just to end here on a final note, I think it's absolutely great that Sony finally came out of their cupboard and announced the successor to the PSP, even though they are sticking with the development codename NGP and not calling it the PSP2 yet, though I would wager that this is definitely going to be the PlayStation Portable 2, although we may see some small changes down the line as we get closer to the release date. I think it's safe to say that this is definitely very close to a finished product. I think it's safe to say that Sony won't change any of the hardware currently in the NGP, considering that game developers are already developing games for the system, although we could possibly see a slight change in the hardware if the price point is too high. Considering that the Nintendo 3DS is being released this February for $250 US, we could be looking at the Sony NGP being released at possibly $300 US, considering the performance of the system itself in comparison with the 3DS currently. Although that sounds extremely steep right now, I do believe Sony has a system where they can demand from the consumer $300. The NGP is indeed a very powerful console, and I think people will put the money down and buy the system for that much money. So I think Sony's main priority right now is just to refine their new menu interface, which they're going to be using for the NGP. If you look at the screenshots with the menu being previewed on the NGP screen, you can see the circular icons, which is very similar to, say, the iPhone interface, where you have the icons of all your applications right there in front of you. So very similar to the iPhone interface. And I've been hearing feedback that when you do click or tap on the icon on the NGP, it does load very quickly, very similar to that of the iPhone. So we can expect games to load a whole lot quicker, just like applications load on the iPhone. The UMD not being incorporated into the NGP design, so there will be no loading from disks. So we can expect faster loading times, hopefully, on the NGP, although this will probably mean that we'll be downloading our games directly onto the device. And if it's anything like the PlayStation 3, we could also be looking at installing games after downloading. Although it's very unfortunate that there won't be any backward UMD capability for the NGP, I think Sony is definitely taking a step in the right direction by scrapping the need to carry around all your games on separate discs. It's definitely a whole lot more convenient for the user to have all their games accessible on the NGP, or maybe on a cloud-based system. So although you may not be able to carry all your games that you've purchased on your NGP, at least you will have those accessible to you at any time via the cloud service. I can't see the NGP downloading very big games directly through the 3G network, but once you have access to a wireless network or plug it straight into your PS3, which is connected to the internet, then it just becomes a matter of selecting the games that you want on your NGP and downloading those directly to the system. So that's it, everyone. I hope I covered as much as I could on the NGP. Please let me know if I've missed anything out, and please check out strangegamer.blogspot.com if you haven't already. There's lots of articles there, video game related, posted by our contributors. So it would be great if you could follow us and if you could comment on the other articles available on the website. So thanks for listening, everyone. This is Johnny Lewis for StrangeGamer.